Greetings, and welcome to Movie Recap Vault. In this session we're presenting a recap of the 2008 action, adventure, and sci-fi movie Jumper. David has a crush on Millie, who dreams of traveling to Rome and Paris. She loves the Eiffel Tower snow globe he gives her. Suddenly, Mark grabs the snow globe and throws it onto the snow-covered iced-over river. Millie begs David not to go, and Mark calls him a dork, as David walks to retrieve the snow globe. After showing Millie he got it, David falls through the ice. Millie is panicked, but can't help David. David drifts under the ice with a swift current. David suddenly appears in the aisle of the local library, soaking wet and gasping for air. Confused, he leaves the library, still carrying the snow globe. Remembering his mother left him when he was 5, and he doesn't respect his father, David enters his house. William, David's father, barks at him for returning late and tracking water in the house. David ignores him, and retreats to his bedroom and locks the door. William bangs on the door, and David suddenly vanishes, as William bursts into the room. David reappears in the aisle of the library. Now realizing his new teleporting abilities, he teleports back to his bedroom. He gathers his savings and other items. After seeing a picture of his mother, and remembering she left, he decides he can also leave. Before leaving town, he puts the rescued snow globe on a swing seat at Millie's house, and she finds it after hearing a noise outside. She wonders if David is still alive. David travels to New York City and rents a room at a small hotel. The next day, he experiments with his teleporting skills in a park. After colliding with a couple of trees, his skills improve. David reviews a guide pamphlet, and remembers enjoying time at the Empire State Building with his mother, when he was 5. He then teleports to the same location. He now realizes that he can easily teleport to places he sees in pictures, or places he's visited already. David visits a bank and asks to use the facilities, hoping to get a glimpse inside the vault, so he can teleport there later. That night he teleports into the vault, and is ecstatic. He makes a couple trips back to his room to dump the goods, and then rolls in the pile of cash. The bank discovers the mystery the next day. Roland arrives at the bank, and presents himself as an NSA investigator. He doesn't seem surprised that there were no alarms or signs of forced entry. It appears that Roland may suspect the thief was a teleporter. After years pass, we find David is living in an apartment in the city. His walls are mostly covered with pictures of his travel stops. He has a small room stocked with various currencies and valuables. He appears to live a carefree life focused on his own pleasures. After teleporting to London, he stops at a bar and meets a lady. By teleporting across the room and bumping into the person next to the girl at the bar, David is noticed by Griffin. David leaves the bar with the lady, and spends the night with her. The next morning he teleports to Fiji to surf. He then goes to the top of an Egyptian sphinx where he eats his lunch. When David returns to his apartment, he's met by Roland. Roland explains that he's been looking for David for 8 years. That he's a member of the Paladins, a group that hunts and kills teleporters, or jumpers, because they think they're an abomination. That only God should have the power to be anywhere, at any time. David keeps trying to teleport away, but Roland paralyzes David with a weapon. Roland keeps zapping him with 1,000 volts of electricity. David eventually teleports inside the room where he keeps his valuables, and cuts the wire. He quickly collects some valuables and teleports out of the apartment before Roland can stop him. David arrives briefly in his bedroom at his father's house. His father talks to him through a crack in the doorway, wanting David to stay, and let him know he's not crazy. David lets him know he's not crazy, and vanishes. Meanwhile, Roland is disappointed David escaped. He searches David's apartment and finds a picture of Millie. David visits Millie's mother, and discovers Millie is working at a local bar. After staring at Millie from across the bar for 20 minutes, David decides to leave. While walking out, he's approached by Mark, who recognizes David from high school. David pretends it's not him, then Millie appears. After Mark insults Millie, David punches him. The two fight outside, then through the back gate, then David teleports Mark into a bank vault. David then returns to the bar. As Millie works the bar, she tells David she hasn't traveled because she needs to work for a paycheck and doesn't have money. David invites her to join him when he visits Rome, and she happily accepts. Griffin is then seen in the bar, apparently following David. Both David and Millie are all smiles as they arrive at their hotel in Rome. Meanwhile, Roland interrogates Mark at a police station, and learns of David and Millie. Roland orders the Paladins to Italy. Millie seems very happy admiring the view from their luxury hotel. She's still curious about David's job, but satisfied when he assures her he's not lying to her. The two help each other take their shirts off, and then wrestle before touring the city. Griffin continues to stalk them. When they arrive, they discover the Coliseum has just closed for the day. As Millie talks with the security guard, David walks out of sight and teleports inside a perimeter gate. When Millie walks around the corner looking for him, David lets her enter, and they begin exploring. David teleports to the ground level so he can open a gate from the inside, for Millie. As he walks to the gate, he meets Griffin. Suddenly, two paladins appear and begin shooting their electrified cables at David and Griffin. Griffin eventually neutralizes the two paladins, and after a security guard starts yelling for the police, Griffin teleports into his lair. David follows Griffin, but Griffin orders him to return to Millie. Griffin lets David know that the paladins will kill Millie and David's family. David returns to Millie and lets her know they must leave the Coliseum quickly. The police outside of the Coliseum detain David, and bring him to their police station for interrogation. Millie refuses to wait at their hotel, and instead she waits in the lobby of the police station. David is questioned by the police for hours. They intend to detain him, and keep his passport until the magistrate arrives. Suddenly, Mary arrives. She tosses a handcuff key on the table and tells him he has 30 seconds to leave before the paladins arrive. David recognizes her from a picture, and calls out Mom, but she quickly leaves. David connects with Millie in the police station and informs her they need to leave quickly. At the airport, David tells Millie that he can't travel with her. Millie is devastated, as David doesn't explain the reason he won't join her. Meanwhile, Roland learns that David escaped in Rome, and it appears he knew they were coming. Roland visits William, and wants to know when he saw David last. William tells him 8 years ago, but Roland doesn't believe him. Roland also asks who the lady in a framed picture is. William tells him it's David's mother, who left when he was 5. Roland recognizes Mary as being one of the Paladin team members. David visits Griffin's lair and asks for more information about the Paladins. Griffin informs him that Paladins have been hunting and killing jumpers for centuries. David becomes worried about Millie's safety. While he waits for her flight to land, he goes to check on his father. David finds his father on the floor, and teleports him to a hospital for help. David visits Mark in jail, and discovers Mark told Roland everything about Millie, his father, and his past. David knows he needs to neutralize Roland, before Roland can do more harm. He visits Griffin's lair and tries to convince him to help protect Millie, but Griffin won't help. Griffin doesn't want to debate more, and teleports away. As Griffin teleports to various sites, David follows him, continuing to pester and trying to convince Griffin to help protect Millie. Griffin steals a car and shows David how he can teleport the car, or anything that moves. He tells David a story of a guy that once tried to teleport a building, but it killed him. While driving, Griffin tells David that the Paladins killed his mother when he was 5. Eventually, Griffin agrees to help David protect Millie. They both teleport to the airport, but learn Millie's plane already arrived and she's left the airport. David checks if Millie went to work at the bar, and discovers Roland has already been sniffing around. David is relieved to find Millie safe in her apartment. Millie is upset and doesn't want to hear David's explanation of why he left her at the airport. David learns Roland and his goons are approaching and gets desperate to flee with Millie. He teleports around the apartment, trying to convince Millie he has something to tell her. She gets scared, but David grabs her and they both teleport into Griffin's lair. Griffin is enraged that David brought Millie there directly from where Roland is located. He explains that Roland and the Paladins have equipment that allows them to follow through the teleport site. Millie wanders outside of the lair realizing she's in a much different location. Meanwhile, Roland and his crew set up the equipment in Millie's apartment that allows them to follow David and Millie. David and Griffin hide inside of the lair, waiting for Roland's arrival. David notices a picture of his mother, Mary, and realizes that she's a Paladin. Roland appears and traps David with the electrified cables. Griffin torches Roland with a flamethrower, moving them both back into Millie's apartment. Millie returns and releases David from his restraints. She wants to go home, and for David to then leave her in peace. David agrees, and lets her know she has always been his true love. Suddenly, Griffin appears with the Paladin's jump box. Millie is then captured by cables reaching through the jump portal, and she's yanked back into her apartment with Roland and his crew. Roland has her pinned to a wall as a hostage as he waits for David and Griffin to try and rescue her. David desperately wants to rescue Millie, but Griffin wants to use his bomb to kill all of the Paladins. David knows the bomb will also kill Millie, so he takes the bomb and leaves it at the Coliseum. Griffin and David teleport around various worldwide sites as they wrestle the detonator from each other. They jump from the Empire State Building, then into a war zone, and ultimately David pins Griffin on a high-voltage power line. David arrives in Millie's apartment to rescue her. Roland soon has David and Millie both pinned to the wall. Roland gets ready to kill David with a knife. David musters the needed strength to teleport the apartment to the river, before Roland stabs him. Next, David, Millie and Roland are in the library where David first jumped to. David grabs Roland, and teleports him to an elevated cave within the Grand Canyon. He reminds Roland he's different, and he could have dropped him in a shark pool. Months later, David knocks on the door of a house, asking to talk with Mary. Mary appears and David asks her why she left him when he was only 5 years old. His mother explains that he first teleported when he was 5. Being his mother, she couldn't kill him. But, as a paladin, she couldn't live with him. So she left. David wants to know what happens next, and she smilingly tells him she'll give him a head start. David finally gets closure with his mother, and joins Millie freezing outside. David wants to know where Millie wants to go, and Millie tells him to surprise her with a warmer place. The end. Please subscribe and like the video if you'd like to see more. Thanks.